Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Joe Davis, Southern New Hampshire University. Justice 101, discussion 2-1. Let's take a look at this and follow kind of our basic scenario I'm reading. Our basic steps, and that is break down the question. For this particular one, you're given four key facts or parts of a scenario. So the first one is that what's the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution about? And that's unreasonable searches, and those are unreasonable searches conducted by the police. There could be other kinds. Don't worry about it. We're in the criminal justice field. So that's what the Fourth Amendment does, is protects all of us against an unreasonable search by the police, meaning, of course, that there has to be probable cause. Okay, a search must be made with a warrant, a search warrant, or one of the exceptions. So where your friends say, or you see on TV, have you got a warrant? Well, it's really, really complicated. And police do not always need a warrant. The textbook discusses some of those exceptions. Perhaps the easiest is the I can commit no trespass. So when a police officer makes a valid stop for a traffic violation, walks up, looks inside the car, and sees something, dope, dead bodies, something illegal, unusual. Okay, they don't need a search warrant to look at that. That's a very, very simple scenario, I understand. Okay, the other's looking over a fence. The neighbor says, hey, my neighbor's growing dope. That was always the big call. So your police officer arrives and without aid of anything can look over the fence and see. Gets a ladder. That's out of the textbook. Okay, so if we take a look at Maryland v. King, a case from 2009, the courts decided it stretches the question of, can the police take DNA during the booking process? And in this particular case, Mr. King, I believe, was arrested for an assault. It wasn't a sexual assault or anything, I don't think. And so bottom line, as part of Maryland's mandated laws, he was required to give a DNA sample. For those of you that are not familiar, it is a cheek swab, generally speaking. Very simple process, doesn't take but maybe a few seconds. It's similar to having fingerprints or photos taken. That's the concept, is that it's no different. Okay, so when we break down that question, oops, I went too far, and it says, do you think it's a violation of the person's right to be free of an unreasonable search and seizure? Were the circumstances of Mr. King coming to jail in the state of Maryland was he unreasonably searched? Okay, what are the implications of this for all branches of criminal justice? And then do a quick search of the Bill of Rights to investigate the exact wording to inform your response. Okay, so here's when we look at the facts, and this is what I got ahead of myself a little bit here. But this is it. He was arrested for assault and booked. Maryland has a law that mandates DNA, and that sample is then submitted to the state database. King's DNA matched a 2003 rape case, unsolved rape case. His defense attorney claimed protection under the Fourth Amendment, an unreasonable search and seizure of his DNA evidence. The appeals court agreed and said, you're right, that is an unlawful seizure of his evidence, physical evidence from his body. Okay, the Supreme Court overturned that, and their rationale was that the interest of the government outweighed the privacy of the arrested. Now, cases are very complicated, so you have to maybe think about, if you really want to, more of the facts. Go and read the case, because you're now under arrest. You're in custody. There's probable cause for your arrest, all those kinds of things. You're headed to the county jail. You're going to be searched. So it's not just as simple as it seems. So here are the questions. I think that's the last one. The Fourth Amendment says unreasonable. We're going to argue that it is reasonable because, or the courts successfully, the defense attorneys for the state of Maryland successfully argued that it was a reasonable search. It was no more intrusive than having your fingerprints taken, which of course now are done on computer systems. There was a legitimate government concern. Okay, the method of collection was less intrusive than a blood draw, and that becomes the kind of issue or fact in a case that becomes what courts debate argue, and discuss. Okay? California law, the police can forcibly take blood. Bunch of circumstances that, so don't just take that as a blanket. You get to hold them down and draw the blood or break their nose. Don't, no, no, no. It is a simpler process than fingerprints. Custodial arrests are made based on probable cause, okay, which is a Fourth Amendment requirement for the search, that there has to be probable cause for the search. No, it may not be exactly the same for the arrest, but it is certainly going to be part of it. Okay, so now you have a little bit of the reasoning behind it. What are the implications? Well, the future implications is that DNA database will be used over and over and over again. Okay, it can be used to prove the guilt of a suspect. It can also be used to prove the innocence. The Innocence Project all over the country argue this. As I wrote to someone in a reply to their post, depending which studies you look at, and you can find one that'll say what you want, one study shows that 1 in 10 people convicted and sentenced to death are innocent. There are still states that the courts will not mandate or require a DNA test on appeal when the defense attorneys have provided that information, like Project Innocence. Okay, the courts will have to have new evidence to review, new technology to use. So that is enhanced evidence to help the courts. Corrections will have a greater assurance of guilt, and they'll also have a tool for their in-custody investigations, because crimes do occur inside correctional facilities. Okay, in your reply to your peers, it says discuss whether their opinion supports the due process model or the crime control model. This is a very specific response. So to get maximum points on the engagement, this is what you have to address. Discuss whether their opinion supports the due process model or the crime control model of criminal justice. You have to go back to chapter 1. We're going to go backward here to find on page 3, there's a definition of the due process model, and on page 3, there in the right hand column, there are definitions called out. There's the crime control model. Okay, so that's what you need to specifically answer in your replies to your peers' post. All right, if you have any questions, let me know. We can talk on the phone, exchange emails, text, Skype, or use Join Me, an online meeting service. And remember to please keep those cards and letters coming.